Today, I get to share a wonderful interview I had with McArthur Krishna. McArthur has been in the space of normalizing talking about Heavenly Mother, about the feminine divine, and how that has the power or the potential to shift so many things within the LDS faith. And I'm going to extrapolate and say within all faiths, really. I had been wanting to have a conversation with her for some time because once my kiddo came out as transgender, I was put in this place of of questioning or bringing into curiosity my understanding of gender identity, gender expression, what sex assigned at birth meant, and so on. And so I was able to have a fantastic conversation, and this is one of the things that we were able to talk about. So I'm excited to share that with you, along with how McArthur feels about spiritual sovereignty. It is a life skill, something you can practice, something you can learn. As she says, a spiritually sovereign person is a person who knows they can turn to God, get personal revelation, and live by it no matter what. I'm Megan Skidmore. For 2.5 years, I have been talking about evolving faith journeys. I started to tire of the heaviness of this focus. I had the clear message come through. It is time for Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast to evolve into Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. With the same vulnerability and unapologetic authenticity, I will be focusing on the joy in this journey, the life and the living that comes on the other side of maybe, on the other side of what's possible. I want to talk about claiming spiritual sovereignty and becoming your own captain of your vessel. Let's celebrate releasing what no longer aligns for you and connecting with your higher power and honor expanding your energy field to make room for all things new. There is a lot going on in the world today. What practices do you have in place that help you recenter, get grounded, connect to your inner wisdom, and remember you are powerful? On the first Friday of each month, I host a coaching session that anyone is welcome to join. I invite you to get a glimpse into my world and what I do. In this monthly call, I will guide participants in what I term raise your vibration sessions. Essentially, I'm teaching you to increase your awareness of your energy in your body and the messages available to you. I would be so honored to have you on the call. Simply register at the link in the show notes. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm Megan Skidmore, your host, and today I'm so pleased to have McArthur Krishna with me. We've connected a few times in the past, and I'm thrilled. I know you're so busy. You've recently released, you mentioned before I hit record, 3 books, and we'll get to those in a minute. And you make the rounds. You have your own circuit, I guess, of speaking opportunities, both in person and on podcasts. And I'm imagining book launches and such. So thank you for being here and making time out of your schedule.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I love that you're in your car. I mean,
I know for anyone looking at the video, I'm in my car.
That is the joy of the world we live in. We can do things on the go. So just take a moment. Some of my listeners will know who you are and some will not. If you'll just take a few moments and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, including your faith background, your family, maybe include some of your professional pursuits and whatnot, just all those things that make you you.
That is
okay. The highlights, the Reader's Digest version.
I have written 20 some books. Most of those are an effort to provide a world that I would like to see happen for my daughters. I have 3 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in rural West Virginia, which I think I like to blame for my stubborn streak, because we have the state motto of mountaineers are always free. And so I lay all blame on my stubborn streak of growing up amongst a group of people who really just wanted to do their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a very robust and loving family. I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters.
Wow.
And I actually was speaking with a therapist recently, and the person I was sitting next to introduced me herself as, "Oh, she's Christian." And the therapist went, "Oh," and I laughed, and I actually had to immediately stop her because while I understand that people have had the journey of Christianity, honestly, my Christian journey has been really powerfully good. And I want to honor that. And so I feel like so much of the things that make me who I am, how I see the world, how I either do care for others or expect I want to be the person who cares for others, come from the faith that my parents handed down to me and the faith that they so abundantly live. And so I feel like the faith that I carry with me has been a true gift. But maybe it's also because that faith came with that healthy dose of independence. And so I had parents who, specifically my mom, who taught me that she could not prepare me for every life thing that may happen. She could only prepare me to practice and learn and just default into trusting God. And so from a very young age, my mom, we have this joke among my family that it's 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 times we pray about something when you're trying to decide what to do. And my mom taught us that we 100% could expect God to tell us and to converse with us and be aware of us and love us. And I think that really strong rooting in God's will prepared me for some of my life paths that took me much different places than what I would have expected.
Yeah,
Um,
they've taken you overseas.
yeah,
Even.
and I went to BYU twice. I dated wonderful, amazing LDS men who I have nothing but respect for. But when I prayed about who to marry, I got put on a different path. And that path then led me overseas. It led me to a place where church wasn't available. So before the church was doing home church, by necessity, the congregation that was closest to me was a plane ride away. And
Wow, I didn't
yeah,
know that. Wow.
I started at first trying to take the train, but when the train gets delayed, because you've been on the train for 12 hours and then 16 hours and then 20 hours, and you're looking at your watch and you're realizing the sacrament meeting has started, and then sacrament meeting has ended, and then the second block has started. Yeah, pretty soon I realized the train was not going to be my option. So I would literally fly to church once a month.
Oh,
That's how I got
wow.
to church. And I remember
And-
crying in gratitude to be at church. And the kindness of people at church was very real. I was standing in the bathroom one Sunday and I was crying because I was happy to be there, but I was also crying because I had a toddler and I got nothing out of the meeting, right? Because I was too
Yeah.
busy juggling the toddler. And a woman came in and said, "What's going on? What can I do for you?" And I just said, "I'm really frustrated, right? That I came all this way. I took a plane to get here. I put out all this oomph to show up and like I'm not being spiritually fed. I'm chasing my kid." And
Yeah.
she said, "You know what? I would offer to chase it for you, chase her for you, but I'm actually teaching the second block." And I said, "That's fine. It's okay, blah, blah, blah." She said, "No, no, no. You come into my classroom. We're going to make this work." And so while she stood at the front of the room and taught a lesson, she handed my kid whiteboard markers and put her on a chair next to her and stood by her guarding her because she was a toddler and let her draw on the whiteboard
Wow.
while she taught the lesson,
That's fantastic.
just so I could have a moment of spiritual lift, right?
Right. You
And
were
I
living
think
in India at the time,
I was living in
correct?
India. Yeah. And the closest congregation to me was in Delhi.
Wow.
I lived in rural India.
Okay.
So I think the joy of especially being part of a sisterhood at church and women who really look out for one another has always been really powerful. In fact, when I moved to India, a woman sent me a message and she said, "Hey, I've been assigned to be your visiting teacher." Okay, she was back in America. And she just said, "I'm going to be your visiting teacher." So she sent me the Relief Society news. It was full of tidbits about people I loved. And she'd catch me all up what was going,
Fabulous.
and we would chit chat here and there. I didn't find out until years later. No one called her. She called herself.
How did she,
So
what?
she
Oh,
knew that I
wow.
was going to be moving abroad and I
Okay.
was going to have my whole foundation shaken. She'd been a person because of her career path, had been bounced in and out of international places. And she knew that I was going to be ungrounded. And so she assigned herself to be my visiting teacher. And she
God,
kept track of me for years in rural India.
I love that.
Incredibly beautiful.
I love when folks don't wait for an invitation to be extended or an assignment, or
Yeah.
in the LDS faith, it's referred to as a calling,
Yeah.
right? And I think that epitomizes the true spirit of Christ-like love and service, and it's the embodiment of it, I
I
believe.
think so. I think it's truly loving, truly being brothers and sisters.
For
In fact,
sure.
a woman who didn't only been in our ward a few months was moving recently again, and I said, "Hey, I'll come over and help you, and I'll round up some other people." And so I just kind of put out the call, and a whole bunch of people said, "Yeah, we'll come and help you." And it was funny
Hmm.
because then the bishop calls the husband and says, "Hey, I heard you're moving this week. Do you need any help?" And he's like, "Actually, the Relief Society is already here." Right. And the Relief Society, for if you don't know, is our women's organization,
Yes,
right?
I was just
The
going to say
women
that.
were
Hmm.
already on the ground, already doing what needed to be done. And we calculated later, 5 of us were there, and and we worked for 3 hours. So it was like 15 human
Hmm.
hours of work that if this woman would have had to do on her own, it would have taken her 2 full days back to back.
Hmm.
But something that a handful of women could just knock out in an afternoon,
Yeah,
right?
I love that.
And it was fun. Oh my gosh, we laughed and giggled and talked trash all the way through the day. I mean, it was an absolute delight to quote unquote serve, right? We're really just
Hmm.
felt like sisters. We're just being a sisterhood.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I agree. It's so important to connect in ways that we feel called to, and not wait for something outside of ourselves. I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider when asked, but definitely look within, feel within. For me, that's been a huge part of as I've reclaimed I call it my spiritual sovereignty, right, on my own journey here.
Yeah.
I know you talk and share a lot about the feminine divine. That's been a huge focus of not your only focus, but
Mhm.
you've dedicated a lot of time, a lot of
Yeah.
research, a lot of study, a lot of your writing focuses on the feminine divine, Heavenly Mother. I'm curious to know, one of the questions I asked my guests is, when did you begin to realize that maybe some of your belief system wasn't meeting your spiritual needs or wasn't aligning with what you felt on the inside, what felt aligned? It's that's the only way I know how to describe it. It's just something that your inner knowing, your inner
Mhm.
being just knew, and can you share with us about a time when this
Yeah. I was
happened?
12, actually, the first time I remember this feeling.
Okay,
And I
that's
read a
young.
book. Yep. I read a book by Caitlin Peterson called My Turn on Earth. And it talks about that we had a king and queen. And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden, it hit my brain that our theology of a heavenly mother was real. That I had a mother waiting for me who loved me. And I had
Mm-hmm.
an amazing earthly mother. So it wasn't that I particularly felt a lack of this, but all of a sudden, I had this very clear understanding that the supreme beings of the universe were my heavenly parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that rejiggered a lot of things. So Mary Daly, who is not LDS, said, when God is male, then male is God. And I could look
Okay.
around in our
Mm-hmm.
world and I could see that the world was often based on that idea. I don't know if you've heard of a book called Defined by Design, but it talks about how so many things in the Western world were literally designed to a certain male uh, structure, I would say. So the
Okay.
height of escalator stairs, for
Okay.
example. Medical trials didn't include women until 1993, right? Women couldn't get a
Wow.
bank account on their own name until
Right.
1974.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are all of these ways that the world was set up to be functional with men. And this is
Right.
not at all to pit men and women against each other. That's not where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all of a sudden you understand that you're living in a world that held up men as the main character and women as the support role to enable the main character. And to realize that that model
Yeah.
is not our parents' model, to realize that model is actually part of the fallen world model, that our heavenly parents didn't ever want their sons and daughters to interact that way, I think is
Okay.
really, really significant. In fact, our theology in the LDS Church talks about Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother walking side by side. Side by side is not a
True.
hierarchy, that is
True.
partnership.
So when you say this is not our parents' model, you mean our heavenly parents. You're not
Yes.
talking to necessarily to our specific earthly parents. They're part
No,
of,
I mean our
they're
heavenly parents.
subject to this
Right.
fallen world model, just like we are.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
So Emma Smith actually had a revelation given to her where she was told to put off the things of the world. And in that same revelation, she was called to preach and teach and exhort the people of the church. Now, that
Okay.
period of time, women did not preach and teach the churches. That was not a role that was considered acceptable by women. So when I think about the scripture in the Doctrine and Covenants, I think about the reordering of defining that the world is functioning like this, but this is not how God wants it to function.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a divine model.
Mm-hmm.
And so her being called to use her talents and abilities was meant that she had to lay off the bias of the world to step into this in a completely different way. And for me, that was really powerful. So I had this very clear
Mm-hmm.
sensibility when I was about 12. And then I
Mm-hmm.
started to bump into things, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I had someone tell me, well meaning, that they were afraid that when I found out that women were subject to men in the temple, that I would be deeply hurt when I learned the
Mm-hmm.
reality.
Okay.
What's fascinating about that to me is when the person told me that, I thought, I know this. I know what my heavenly parents have taught me about this. I am not a second class citizen. I do not believe that they
Mm-hmm.
want women subject to men. This is not how I think the divine model works. What's fascinating is actually in the LDS faith, you know that that has changed. The language that
Mm-hmm.
specifically created a mediated relationship for women to mediate
Yeah.
with their husband to get to God has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Women absolutely have the right to go to God. In fact, President Nelson said at the last General Conference that women should have confidence in stepping forward to God.
Mm-hmm.
Not just women, men should too, of course. But he's also talked about that women needing to have spiritual ability and spiritual connection and spiritual authority
Mm-hmm.
and need to speak up and speak out. And so I want I want so much for our heavenly parents model and what
Mm-hmm.
the prophet is talking about to be something that sinks so deeply within our souls that when we reject
Mm-hmm.
the model of the world, it feels like coming home,
Yeah.
feels like it's aligned with our doctrine in really strong and powerful ways.
So I'm hoping you can speak to this next idea. Whenever someone realizes that their path is the fork that you're going down now, the pivot that you've now taken, whether you've sought after it or not, I have found most people don't go necessarily looking for it. It's because something new information is presented with them, to them, and kind of sends them on a path they weren't expecting. A lot can come up. You already talked about a woman who said she was afraid for when you were going to go to the temple and what that experience might be like for you. When you think about, I'm kind of speaking collectively here, we're from a similar generation. I think about obstacles or struggles that come up. And for me, one of the things that's been particularly difficult is this change happens so slowly, right?
Mhm.
Those that grew up with the way things were in their day and in their age and were taught that though that's the way that it is and that's the way, you know, from God and all of that. And they're very resistant to opening their hearts, opening their minds, trying to see things from a different point of view. I'm not saying that they don't or won't, but it's one thing to be loved or seen just for who you are versus one thing to be loved or seen from a place of almost out of tolerance or out of, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm taught I need to do. I need to be
Mm.
loving and accepting regardless of what this person believes or doesn't believe.
Mm.
Does that make sense? What I'm
So
saying?
one of
Like,
the
how
things
have you navigated that? Yeah.
one of the things I think is so important about the doctrine of our
Yeah.
Heavenly Mother is it changes the nature of the relationship between humans and deity. So humans and deity historically have been worshiping a king. right? So that makes other
Okay.
humans mutual subjects to the king. When we add in Heavenly Mother to the mix and we create these familial relationships, we understand that deity and heaven and our future are about relationships, and that everyone truly is our brother and sister. So I think all of us have tendencies to other people, to make them be the other. We see the ways that we're similar and different. I
Mm-hmm.
forevermore will be judged because when I lived in Delhi, I saw a woman sitting on a row right in
Mm-hmm.
front of me, and she had a bunch of kids, and I had one biological at that time. And I thought, I'm sure we don't have anything to talk about. I'm sure we don't have anything in common. And truth be told is that she became one of my dearest friends when I lived there. And like the judgment that I had on her is shame on
Yeah.
me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I immediately othered her because of the differences instead of recognizing that those differences could be a strength in our relationship, that I had things to offer her and she had things to offer me. And I think that the idea of understanding that God is family is really significant because that means that instead of having this obligation to love one another, we have this baked in well to tap into to say, these are truly my brothers and sisters, even when they are different than I am. And I think that reorientation of God is particularly powerful right now in our society.
So, I hope this doesn't catch you off guard. Tell me more about that, particularly at the intersection of those who are our brothers and sisters and loved ones and are LGBTQ plus in their identity. What are your thoughts on that? Because I love what you're saying, that God is family.
So one of the books that we just wrote,
Mm-hmm.
the Mother in Heaven, a Gospel Topics Essay Study Guide, we wanted to have a really wide range of voices. And Tom Christofferson was one of those voices. And
Awesome.
I said to him, Tom, you're a gay man. I don't understand that world at all. I have not experienced that. So I truly love Tom and we're dear friends, but I don't pretend to understand his world.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I would love for you to write an essay in this book so you can tell me, what does Heavenly Mother matter to you? How has this played in your world? Because I don't presume to understand what it
Mm-hmm.
means or doesn't mean to you. And he graciously did. And so we have an essay from Tom in our book. But I think that one of the easy ways to other someone is to other their LGBTQ, to other their faith, to other their political beliefs, to other their life choices. And LGBTQ is obviously one of the ways that happens. I think if our LGBTQ brothers and sisters knew that they were loved and welcomed in the family of God, that that would be a powerfully,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't think relieving is quite the right word, like a swaddling or a loving or a holding, almost to be held by the idea
Mm-hmm.
of a familial God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't pretend to understand how the universe works in big, long term,
Yeah.
forevermore kinds of ways.
Yeah.
But 100% I know that our heavenly parents love all of us. And if I'm to become like my heavenly parents, that means
Mm-hmm.
I have to learn to love all of us.
Yeah. You know, I grew up born and raised in the LDS faith, go back 6 generations and all of the things. I remember learning that Elohim was actually plural. It
Hmm.
meant it included the male and the female. It wasn't singular, right?
It is plural. It doesn't always include male and female.
But there are times when it does do that.
Yes. Yes.
And that for me, um, I don't know if lifeline is the right way to describe that, but just that knowledge, that understanding, especially because it has to do with language. Words matter.
Hmm. Hmm.
The way that we use those words, the words that we actually use when describing ourselves, it matters. And when I learned that I had a child who is transgender, it really, I could say, upset the apple cart. It was really like it just, I don't know. It was more than that, but it just kind of, my understanding of gender was challenged in a
Yeah.
big, big way. And I'm not going to go into that during this interview, but one of the things that has brought me so much peace is that I think this is my thought anyway. I believe our LGBTQ brothers and sisters specifically our transgender brothers and sisters, are here to teach us more about the marrying of those two energies, of the masculine divine and the feminine divine, and how difference is not just beautiful, that's the order of divinity, right?
Mm,
We all have divinity within us, right? We're taught that we're the seed of divinity, that we're the offspring of God, right?
hmm.
And I I heard a few days ago there's one in 400 trillion chances that we are going to be born, right, into this existence. That sounds pretty purposeful to me. And I'm hopeful for the day where we can see these differences that are connected with genes,
Mm,
with DNA, hormone, and such. And I'm not talking just LGBTQ plus individuals. I'm talking those that are neurodivergent. I'm
sure.
talking those that have chromosomal differences and are born with different ways of learning and being
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
society and all of those things, different learning abilities, challenges, and so on. So I'm just curious for you, why is it important to know? Because I know you talk and you share about the knowledge, the experience that you have, and you've done research and you include citations and whatnot in your writing. But why is it important that we understand that we all have masculine energy and we all have feminine energy, both of them divine, both of them purposefully and beautifully gifted?
Yeah. So I think that some of the lines and some of the terms we've drawn are much more um, crisp than what they actually are.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I have zero interest in babies. Babies are boring. I love
Thank you for
toddlers.
being just honest in
Straight
your
up.
experience with that.
Straight up. But like age 2 to like 4, 5, I find utterly delightful. I mean, their
Hmm.
brains are on and learning and alive, and they're like stumbling over themselves with their enthusiasm and they're cheeky. I mean, like, I love a cheeky toddler. And but at the same time, my husband is like gooey for babies. Like, oh, baby, baby, baby. Like, oh, let me hold the baby. I want to hold the baby. Like, he cannot get within the blast zone of a baby and not like have that thing up against
Hmm.
him, snuggled with him. He is
Hmm.
way more a baby nurturer than what I am, right?
Hmm.
I'm a nurturer of toddlers. I'm a nurturer of businesses. I'm a nurturer of projects. I'm a nurturer of art. I'm a nurturer of ideas, but not babies. And I think just labeling that one or the other is a nurturer is a disservice to the idea that we can nurture in a multitude of ways and maybe not the expected ways.
Hmm.
By the same token, men are to be the protectors. My husband just lost our child in a store the other day,
Hmm.
right? And I had very strong protective reactions to that.
Okay.
And I would say, as far as that sort of situation goes, I'm way more of a protector than what
Okay.
he is, right? And so I think we've sometimes assigned these strict gender roles in a way that doesn't quite make sense. And that I know that the system my husband and I have set up between each other works. Our marriage
Hmm.
works. And the ways
Hmm.
that I'm the nurturer and he's the nurturer and I'm the protector and he's the protector. And we've got this synergy
Hmm.
among us, and us together is stronger than us separate,
There's
right?
more of a balance, it sounds like.
There's a balance, but that doesn't mean that our arrangement is going to be the same balance as
Right.
anyone else's arrangement.
Right.
So what I think is really important within a system is that balance. But that a balance can happen in a much more creative, flexible, diverse way than what we maybe grew up with
For
or maybe
sure.
what we understood.
I agree. I think the gender, the strict definitions that we have surrounding gender roles, gender binary, and so on is harmful to everyone. It's not just harmful to women, it's harmful to men too.
Yeah, I would say I'm appreciative of a world that lets my husband be the tender nurturer that he can be,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that is to his
Right.
credit. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good if women can feel empowered to work or create or nurture, like you said, a business, a career, a profession, ease some of that burden from the male who is traditionally expected to provide. I mean, what a huge
Where
heavy burden.
our General Relief Society president owned her own law firm,
Hmm.
and she had support people who helped take care of her children. So, from my standpoint, the fact that we don't question that she's a woman of God is really important, right? If you were the General Relief Society president, we do not question that she is a woman of God. So we can look at her choices and look at her life and say, oh, this also is acceptable to God. And there are women who've wondered if their choices are acceptable for God,
Hmm.
have wondered if they were making the right thing for their family, have wanted the courage to make maybe different choices than the structure that got handed to them. And I think for me, the most important idea is that we turn to God. We turn to
Me
God and
too.
ask, what should my life look like? Make me an instrument in thy hands.
I
And
agree.
then whatever that structure looks like, because to me, it's not about the structure. It's not whether or not a woman stays home or doesn't stay home or works outside of the house or works only in the house. Like, it's not about the structure. It's about whether or not you have involved God in the decision-making process.
Hmm.
And if the couple feels empowered to make that decision, right? It shouldn't just be an assumed, like, this is how this is going to work. I'm going to make the decision for you, right? Like,
Hmm.
if every party in that marriage is participating in decision making and involving God in that process.
Hmm.
And understanding that life is long and can look really different ways than what it does at this time or this time or this time. And I think that's, and not only is life long and can change in our own lives, but also other people can get different answers. A friend of mine
Hmm.
was planning on going to nursing school, said a prayer, and God said, no, I need you in medical school. You're going to be a doctor,
Oh, wow.
right? And that was not her plan, right?
Hmm.
She did not think being a doctor was particularly family friendly, as what she thought of nursing, but that's what God called her to do. So
Hmm.
when someone looks at that choice, are they judgmental? Or do they understand that she made that choice based on pure revelation to her?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
think we have to ratchet down our judgments because judgments are based on ego. Judgments are based on assuming that we know best for someone.
Yeah.
That's a
Sometimes
very
fear.
bold assumption to play that we get to play God,
Yeah.
right? I barely can have the judgment over my own life. Let's not think that I get to
For
make
real.
judgments on somebody else's.
That's a great way to look at it. I agree 100% with you're talking about involving God in the decision making, in seeking your path and following that path. And I would add, I think we shouldn't be surprised when that answer maybe is different than what we thought it might be or expected it to be, or perhaps we're told it would be. We should even expect maybe that it's going to be different because how many billions of people are there? There's so many. And
And
how
I
many
can
needs does that represent?
and I can say off the top of my head, I know so many women who got exactly opposite answers.
That's
One
funny.
woman got told that she should pursue a musical career. Another woman got told she should put her career on hold and have a child. That's not what her
Mm,
plan was. Another woman got told
mm,
that she should sell the dream house that they built and she should stay home. Another woman got told, as I just said, that she should go to medical school. So here's the thing, is just like off of the
mm.
acquaintance and off of conversations I've had even in the last couple of weeks, I can lay down exact opposite instructions that God gave different women.
That's
So quit
fantastic.
assuming that there's one type of
Yeah,
instruction that's going to come. Like,
right.
of course, this is going to be the answer. No, it's not. The answer could be as wild and as myriad as what our life experience demands.
I love that. So I want to shift a little bit. I mentioned I have reimagined my podcast starting the beginning of this year. I added the word living to the
Mm,
front. I call it living beyond the shadow of doubt because I have found as we step into that unknown, into what we cannot see or presently understand in the moment, but as we step into that uncertainty, it is amazing what we find on the other side of that. There's so much
yeah.
joy, So much living, so much new understanding and knowledge. It's an expansion in so many ways. And I'd love for you to share with us what those have been, what moments of joy and bliss
Yeah.
you have found in this journey.
So I have always loved C.S. Lewis's analogy about a person who thought that they were repairing a small cottage. And then as a turret flies up over here and a moat gets dug over here and the ballroom gets pushed out, all of a sudden they realize that this small, tidy cottage they thought they were building had become a castle. And the analogy that C.S. Lewis was
Ooh, I
drawing
just
is
got
that,
chills. That's so cool.
isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
So C.S. Lewis used it as an analogy for when we turn our life over to God. We have expected expectations about the tidiness and maybe even the smallness of our lives. And yet instead we have this expansiveness that sometimes we can't even grasp or see or even predict around the corner, but that we have this fullness of joy, this fullness of life, this abundance that we never could have even imagined.
Wow.
And so I think for me, my life has gone none of the ways I thought it was going to go. And and for me to really deeply imagine the joy of that and the expansiveness of it and the ways that I held to the learnings that God taught me,
Mhm.
right? God taught me I am to become a full being, right? God taught me that in that process of becoming a full being, I need to care about others and donate
Mhm.
time and energy and effort to helping, that I am to use my talents. In fact, my patriarchal blessing speaks specifically about this. And so as we turn our life over to God, we have this opportunity to build in a robust castle what we'd thought we were just
Mm.
doing a few repairs on, right?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of abundance is had through deity, right?
Hmm.
Like you can live a good life in any number of ways. I know any number of people who do not involve God in their life. That simply because they don't does not mean they're going to have tragic fates, right? I mean, like, I don't have that sort of thinking. But I think for me, intentionally crafting a life that is turned over to God to be an instrument in God's hands has given me an abundance that I did not know was possible. And God's path, even when it looks different than other people's or different than I expected. And I've had to have some mourning in there. There's been some grieving in there for lives that I did not end up having that I thought I was going to have.
Hmm.
But at the same time, to really embrace that abundance and have gratitude for that abundance, despite the differences and the expectations, I think has really led to a more, I don't want to say peaceful life because that makes it sound like it's static, but a more thriving life.
Mm. Almost dynamic, really. Dynamically peaceful.
Dynamically peaceful. There you go.
Yeah. You are anything but static in what I have seen and know of you.
Yeah.
So one last question. I'm going to throw in an extra. It's kind of a two-parter here, but I always wrap up with what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt? I also, when we were DMing, you said something. You mentioned, yeah, I can't wait to chat. I've been thinking about spiritual sovereignty a lot lately.
Mm,
I'd love to know what your definition of spiritual sovereignty is, or what does that mean to you, as well as what does living beyond the shadow of doubt?
yeah. To me, spiritual sovereignty is maybe the most important life skill that someone can learn.
Life skill. I haven't thought of it that
100%.
way. Interesting.
Yeah, it's something you can practice. It's something you can learn. It's
True.
not something you just check off and be like, I'm sovereign, done.
True.
It's something that you continue to grow and develop. But the reason I say that I think it's maybe the most important thing is, to me, a spiritually sovereign person is a person who knows they can turn to God, get personal revelation, and live by it no matter what. That makes someone spiritually sovereign. And that's not independent of God's sovereign, that is working with God's sovereign. So that's a really important part of my definition, right? Sometimes I think people worry about if people become sovereign, that then they'll go off, right? For
Right.
me, being spiritually sovereign involves God, right? That is
Hmm.
inherent in the definition. But in this spiritual sovereignty, it means that you have to be willing to tackle things that are uncomfortable and challenge you.
Mhm.
In fact, I just had lunch with a new friend, and she said to me the most brilliant thing. She said, God keeps testing to see how uncomfortable I'm willing to get.
Mm.
Right?
Well, at least she's onto
Yeah.
onto them.
She's recognizing the pattern. Right? But she keeps talking about these inspirations that she keeps having to do and move and be and become and help people and truly just
Yeah.
God wants our development. That's why we're here. And a key component of development is agency. We believe that agency is so important that we're willing to let really terrible things happen in this world, right? Because agency matters. Without agency, you can't grow and develop. That's the entire point of Earth life. And so, if we're going to have agency and we're going to exercise it, that means we have to become sovereign beings. And that means we have to challenge when answers come to us that are uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And so, for example,
Yeah.
um,
Here it
a
comes.
woman, a woman I heard about feels really called to do healings, to be a healer. And she's wrestling with what that means within her faith tradition that does not embrace women doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a moment. And she hasn't resolved it. So I don't have the end of the story for you. But just this idea that she has to turn to God to sort this out. I had another conversation with a woman earlier this week where she is dating someone not of her faith. And she says, I keep feeling like this is where I should be, but it's so uncomfortable to go against what I always expected and what I was always taught. She's going to have to be spiritually sovereign in making this decision because it may lead her down a path that she wasn't expecting, or it might not. Maybe there's something for her to learn along the way. But the only way to get through this earth life and to maneuver through these demanding decisions is to learn how to be a sovereign being,
Yeah.
a spiritually sovereign being. And
Yeah.
I think this impacts everything. A friend of mine was called to a calling that she felt was absolutely wrong for her, prayed about it, felt blah about it, and then had to turn down the bishop 5 times because she had to be spiritually sovereign to say, I understand we're getting different revelation here, but my revelation is telling me this is not right. And that doesn't mean I don't think we shouldn't serve in our communities and in our faith groups. It is say we have to listen to God speaking to us.
My true hope and prayer is to inspire more women to lean into that spiritual sovereignty and know that it doesn't mean anything about them if they are aligned in what their response is, just like your friend. It's okay for her to lean into that decision and that choice and verbalize it,
Yes.
and for someone else, in this case her ecclesiastical leader, to
Yep.
have a different thought, opinion, answer, whatever on that. They
And I
don't
think our
need to be
faith
mutually
teaches,
exclusive.
no,
That's his response. She's allowed to have hers and own it. It's her life.
absolutely. And I think when mothers and fathers receive revelation about their children, right, that this can come into bump against institutions, churches and schools and friend groups, and
Yeah.
like it can bump. And so I think our faith does a really good job of teaching how to reach out to God to get inspired. It doesn't always teach us a really good model of how to stick with our inspiration when it contradicts what is comfortable. And I think understanding that growth is uncomfortable and that we can be called to God's path, and that path
Right.
can be very clearly our path
Right.
and still not be comfortable.
I don't know how it is for you, but I think growing up, I kind of equated if I felt awkward or uncomfortable or amiss or something, that meant a loss of spiritual guidance or the
Yes.
spirit or
Yes.
something along those lines. And I've learned that is absolutely not the case.
No.
It's
No.
our feelings are there to guide us, to provide us with information, to help us be curious about what's really going on for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we're on a wrong path.
I have a very clear experience where I 100% knew I was on God's path, and it was remarkably uncomfortable. And I think that really character forming experience, it really forged this within me. That now I recognize that there's the discomfort of being out of line with the spirit. But when you know you're in line and you know you're receiving, there's the uncomfortableness of
Mhm.
just having to step into tricky, hard,
Yeah.
demanding things. And that's life, right?
Yeah.
And that's a different feeling. But being able to kind of, right now, my 8-year-old has a really hard time, 9-year-old, differentiating between when her stomach hurts when she's sick and when her stomach hurts when she's hungry, right? It feels to her the same thing, but you have really opposite things that need to happen there, right? Like if you're ready
That's
to
such a
puke,
good
you don't puke,
exercise and
right?
practice that you're doing with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's lucky to have you to
And
help
so
guide her and
being
learn
able
that.
to process that through, right, is
Yeah,
one is like get a bucket and the other is you need some food in your body, right? And those are totally different like
they are.
antidotes to the
They
situation.
are.
But I think the same thing holds for our spirituality, right? That there's different kinds of uncomfortableness. And the more
For
that we're a
sure.
finely tuned instrument,
For sure.
the more we're able to identify what this is, what's happening.
Yeah.
But I think I cannot overstate the importance of becoming spiritually sovereign.
Yeah.
You have to do this in order to become like God. That's the
Yeah.
entire point of our agency, of exercising our agency
Mhm.
over and over and over again, is to become more godlike. And
For
that
me,
means you must
that's
be
pure
spiritually
bliss
sovereign.
for me.
Yeah,
Owning that. That's
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
mine. It's mine, and I know that. And there were times that I can honestly say I don't think I really understood or knew that fully. So
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that with us. Um, I just have a few questions to throw out. I'm looking for 1 or 2 word answers. That's it. Just
Okay.
get to know you a little bit better. So share with us your favorite book. It can be one of your own.
That'd be funny. Whichever book I've just finished that I don't have to work on anymore.
Is
I'm a
that one?
person who really likes to start things and I hate finishing. So like, oh, if I finished it, then by golly, it's the best book ever. Um, what would be a really that was more than one word answer already. So okay,
Oh, it's
next question.
totally fine. Well, we'll talk about the one you just released, Mother's Day. We're recording this a few days after Mother's Day,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's your most recently
It's called
published.
Mother in Heaven, a Gospel
Okay.
Topics Essay Study Guide. It's for anyone. Elder Renlund said in General Conference 2022 that the doctrine of Heavenly Mother could be found in the Gospel Topics essay. You can find that in the Gospel app, in the tools online. But we decided we really wanted to dig in and study it. In fact, he said there that studying is part of spiritual growth. And so we provided a tool, a mechanism for people to study, which is not the end all be all, right? It should be like,
Right.
get into
It's a
the
starting
essay
point
and start this and then become spiritually sovereign and, see where it
for
takes you.
sure.
But I think it's helpful to have tools, right? We're people who do
Mm-hmm.
better with tools.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that my favorite book is the one
Nice.
that just finished. Let's go with
That's
that.
great. Okay. I think I know this answer. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Interesting. So I have consistently been an extrovert,
Uh-huh.
but after living in India for 8 years, where there's
Uh-huh.
no such thing as an introvert, my oldest daughter would feel this pain. I feel both. I'm a really solid X in the middle where like I get absolutely rejuvenated in talking to people and having energy with people. And I absolutely need time by myself to
Mm-hmm.
also refuel.
Beautiful.
I'm right in the middle.
Ambivert. Yeah. Who is your favorite artist?
Who's my favorite artist?
Mm-hmm. That could be you too.
That's funny. Um,
They're
this is funny.
talented.
I have a mixed answer for you.
Okay.
There's a
Take it.
carpenter in India named Munkle Das, who
Okay.
is an artist in his how his brain works and what he creates and how he is so intelligent in what he tackles and his end products are both beautiful and functional. And so Munkle Das might be my favorite
That's great.
artist.
That's a great name.
And then I have a whole slew of friends who are artists, all the people who contributed art to our books. Lots of them have become dear friends. And I would say
Mm-hmm.
that the work I see them do, I don't know if you know this, but when we started with the Girls' Guide to Heavenly Mother and the Boys' Guide to Heavenly Mother, we needed 50 some pieces of art showing Heavenly Mother. And there were 5 at the time.
Wow.
And
I didn't
there's
know that.
recently been a study that released, and they stopped counting at 500.
Mm,
So in about 7 to 8 years,
that's
this
fabulous.
has grown
That's fantastic.
exponentially.
That's so good.
So I would say artists who are revealing truths to us, artists who are portraying doctrine that we've
Mm-hmm.
never visually had access to before are my favorite. People
That's
who
great.
make my brain rework and see the world in a new way. There's a Jesus image I saw recently by Chris Ann that shows a man in a plaid shirt and a baseball cap and a halo around him, and he's working with a plant. It's clearly Jesus. The title's Lord of the Vineyard. I had never seen Jesus look like a Mexican immigrant before in my life.
That's great.
And it reordered my brain.
Yeah.
And that kind of art is
We
incredibly
need
valuable.
more of that. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. Are you a night owl or a morning lark?
Night owl for sure.
Who is your celebrity crush?
My husband.
Okay. Do you do still or carbonated water, or are you diet soda fan or some other fun beverage?
Fizzy makes me want to vomit. Bleh.
Oh, no fizzy for you.
No
Okay.
fizzy.
Furthest place you've traveled? Last question.
The furthest place I traveled, like the longest it took me to get there?
Sure.
I mean, literally or metaphysically? Like, what are we? The depths of my soul is maybe the farthest place I've ever traveled.
That's a great answer. I'll take it. I love that answer. No one's ever responded to that question in that way. That's a good answer. The depths of your soul. That's great. So if folks wanted to reach out with questions for you,
yeah,
what would be the easiest way?
Easiest way is probably Instagram. I'm on Instagram as McArthur Krishna, creating, or my email address is my name, McArthurKrishna@gmail.com.
Okay. I'll make sure to leave those in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time and your insight, your wisdom, and sharing of all of your experience with us. So appreciated.
Thank you.
Appreciate
It's been a
you.
pleasure.
Writer, teacher, author, Mormon scholar, and founder of Dialogue Journal, Eugene England said, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue." As a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, my hope is that Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is an extension of that vision. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more, or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.